Today's going to be another brief philosophical interlude or lecture. And this lecture is going to be precisely about the question of whether we live in a single omniverse or if we live in a cascade and an infinitude of them. Um, so it's a question of basically a monism versus pluralism at the cosmogonic and cosmo-experientialistic level. Levels of ontology, levels of onticity, spherical runs that lead up from absolute infinitesimal to the absolute infinity, omega and alpha, not just in the Meinongian realist sense, but in the sense of what it means to cosmologically spatialize a universe. So how do we know now if we live in a dyad or a monadistic universe? So do we live in a single omniverse? Now this precludes the multiverse theory to even exist. And I kind of enjoy the Hartle multiverse. I enjoy, some Penrose Wheeler models. I enjoy, David Deutsch, even though he's not a particular advocate for multiverse theory. But otherwise, I really just want to say that this is a very good underlying ontological question, whether we live in a single omniverse or a cascade kind of an infinitude multiplicity of them. So, um, so I think that the basic notion of whether a reality must be contingent or necessitarian based on its ontological commitment to the monad versus dyad kind of dynamism logic that permeates the spatial temporality dimensions and pointillisms that make up precisely what is the omniverse in itself. So I think that this whole notion of whether we live in a modal omniverse, like a single omniverse, or a pluralistic omniverse. Now, that's a very, very beautiful question. And for the record, I just want to say I'm a bit of an agnostic. Like, I don't really know for sure all that much. If we truly live in a single omniverse or live in a multiple cascaded omniverse, I'm not too sure. But what I do know is that, and I'll tell you, what I do know that the reality is that reality is often very panarchical. So reality can often be manipulated to various space-time ingenuous manifolds that previously haven't existed before prior to space-time engineering. And I also think that the whole notion of what it means for a reality to be autistic or schizophrenic or even to be psychiatrized is an ever inherently powerful notionality. And I think that reality is very fluid. That's kind of a Heraclitean view. It's not so much a Parmenian view. You could say, well, reality is not fluid. It's changeless. It's eternal. It's governed by these incorrigible, immutable, indefatigable, sorry, I'm not pronouncing that probably right, but these worlds, these pocket worlds, these plurality worlds in the quantum David Lewisian sense, basically permits not just one omniverse, but a cascade infinitude of them. Because if you say on a plurality worlds, was the world contingent? Is a world coterminous with an omniverse in itself? So I think basically the underlying bottom question, the foundation here, is a Foundianism one, inspired by our good old more obscure but nevertheless brilliant philosopher Susan Hack. So the foundationalism of the premises which coherently abide by their circularity, but their circularity is not an logical refutation of fallacies. It's rather a circularity that's Ouroboros like and fact checks each other's premises through a Gnostic kind of cyclicism. So I think that ultimately, I believe that it depends again on the dialectic you choose. You can be a panarchical monist, or a pluralist, and you could say, well, we only live in one omniverse, or you could say we live in a multiple of omniverses. Now, if you use empiricism, now that's a good theoretical physics question in itself. But beyond post-empiricism, is the Platonic realm in only one omniverse, or is it located across a descendant or ascendant run of Anselmian-like great chain of omniverses? Well, that depends perhaps if this in itself means God exists. So if there is ultimately the highest omniverse of all omniverses out of an infinity, is that where God is located? If you measured by, ethical or objective moral maximalism. So anyways, I hope that this beautiful lecture really informed you about aesthetic realism and whether to be a monad or dyad, and why choice maximalism is very important, utilitarian maximalism, the meta-ethics of that. And I want to thank you for listening and diving in and keeping an open kind of facilitated mind that's a fulcrum, very Hellenic, anti-feudalism. So anyway, futility, rather, feudalism. So I hope that the reality of all realities being itself part of one omniverse, a mirological transworld identity of multiple omniverses, is precisely what, not only the relevant time invariant metric you're using, but also the invariant metric you're using of eternity itself and its quantification, the existential quantification of eternity. Eternity can be solipsistically, one ousia, one internal Parmenidean substance, or over necessary splits in the Spinoza-esque kind of modalities way. Thank you so much, and I hope you reach me out again. All right. Thank you. Bye.